For 2026, Mazda has updated their best-selling CX-5. Some of the updates are good, like more interior space, but others, perhaps not so much, like the giant monolithic iPad that's on the center dashboard. So, has Mazda ruined the only sensible crossover with the Soul just to please their accounting department? Let's start with what they've changed underneath the hood, or rather what they haven't changed under the hood. The standard 2.5-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder engine remains. It produces 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. The turbocharged engine is gone. It's no longer available in the CX-5, but in its place is going to be a new hybrid powertrain. However, that's not going to come until probably next year. Despite this new version of the CX-5 not having a turbocharged engine, this naturally aspirated engine that it does have is perfectly adequate. It gets up to speed within a reasonable amount of time, and on highways, you don't need to full throttle it to overtake slower moving traffic. It also gives a nice surge of torque. That peak of 186 pound-feet is reached at 4,000 RPMs, and in everyday driving, you can feel that build up to the peak torque. Again, it's not a fast crossover, but it's perfectly fine for everyday traffic or highway merging. Paired with this engine is an automatic transmission, a 6-speed automatic transmission. That's right, only 6 gear ratios. But you know what? It works. It doesn't hunt around like a 9 or 10-speed automatic, and it doesn't drone like a CVT either. It just does its job. However, the lack of more gear ratios and that large displacement engine means that the Mazda CX-5 is a thirsty crossover. It's rated for 9.9 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 7.9 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. In the real world, those numbers are easily achievable, as I averaged 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers during my time with the CX-5. But those numbers are still quite high, considering that most of the competitors without hybrid engines can average about 1 liter per 100 kilometers less than this one can. But what it lacks in fuel economy and straight line speed, it makes up for it when the roads get interesting. That's where the old CX-5 was a real treat, and this one hasn't lost that magic. It comes standard with all-wheel drive, which isn't the most sophisticated system out there, but it'll still get you out of a snowdrift. The steering is nicely weighted, whether it's in the normal or sport drive mode. You turn the wheel and the front end reacts like an eager puppy. And with the 187 horsepower of the engine, the car feels playful for what it is. It doesn't try to scare you, it's accessible and enjoyable for everyone. On top of that, the longer wheelbase does make this new generation of CX-5 just a little bit more comfortable than the outgoing model. It still has a firm-ish ride compared to something like the Nissan Rogue, but you can go for long road trips without feeling like as though you've been in a 1-hour gym session. When you look at the new CX-5, it still looks like a CX-5, but one that's been modernized. The front end looks more chiseled out compared to the outgoing model. The DRLs look sharper than ever, and the grille looks a bit more intimidating than the last one. Out back, the taillights look just as sharp as the front daytime running lights. You get real exhaust pipes that are not hidden behind the bumper, but Mazda did get rid of their logo. Instead, it now actually spells out Mazda, just to make sure that everybody knows what car this is. And finally, to the side, the new CX-5 is longer than before, and that does make a difference when you sit back here. Look at this! Behind my tall 6'4" driving position, I actually have plenty of legroom and also headroom. That was the biggest complaint with the previous generation CX-5. And also getting in and out of these back seats or buckling up a child seat is much easier because the doors open at almost 90 degrees, just like the Honda CR-V. Behind these back seats, the CX-5 now has 954 liters of space. Fold down the backrest and the cargo capacity increases to 1,882 liters. There isn't that much small item storage space underneath the trunk floor, but you do get a temporary spare wheel instead of a tire repair kit. Up here, space is even better than in the back. Visibility is good all around as well, and the view at the back is pretty good too, so long as you drop those headrests on the rear seats. The materials are great too, for the most part. There's leather that spans the dashboard and the door panels. The armrests too are very well padded both on the door and the center console. But there seem to be a few more plastics in this cabin than before. From the armrest down, it's all plastics. That's fine around the areas where your feet would bash up against the trim, but it's not where you want to see it around the center console. The old CX-5 had stitched leather and unfortunately gloss black plastic, which wasn't the greatest. But this new CX-5 doesn't get any of that, and the matte plastic just looks dull on that center console. Speaking of dull, this giant tablet on the dashboard. It's a 15.6-inch touchscreen that is only available on this top spec trim with the Premium package, or the Premium Plus in the United States. All other trims get a 12.9-inch touchscreen. It runs on a Google-based system, so it has Google Maps and Google Assistant built in. The graphics are great for the most part. The background CX-5 in the home screen has a little bit of pixelation, but everything else is crisp and clear. It's also fairly easy to navigate around, and Mazda has integrated a lot of functions into this touchscreen. And that's my problem with it. Mazda gave in and just followed what everyone else was doing. There are no more physical controls in this cabin. Want to change the radio volume? You have to use the touchscreen. Want to change the climate temperature? Use the touchscreen. Want to turn on the heated seat? Use the touchscreen. Want to turn off the auto start stop? Use the touchscreen. Want to recall the driver's seat memory? Say it with me. Use the touchscreen. Very good. But all jokes aside, all of the functions that I just listed used to have dedicated physical controls in the previous generation of the CX-5. But now they're all integrated into this touchscreen. Now granted, some of the functions like the radio volume you can control using these capacitive touch controls on the steering wheel, and others like turning on the heated seat can be done through voice commands. But those don't work 100% of the time. I have had some issues where Google Assistant didn't understand that I wanted to turn on the ventilated seat or turn it off, and just kept saying, "Sorry, I don't understand." But the ironic thing is that Mazda in the past have said that their old rotary knob and the physical controls used to be less distracting while driving than a touchscreen. And yet, here they are, with a touchscreen and no more physical controls. So what gives, Mazda? Why did you just join all the other sheep? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I don't want a touchscreen in cars. I just want some physical controls for commonly used functions without needing to press the touchscreen 3 or 4 times or interacting with an AI to get a function changed. The Lexus IS or Honda CR-V are great examples of this blend of physical and touchscreen controls. Anyway, moving away from all that, the price of the 2026 Mazda CX-5 now starts at $36,300 Canadian, and this fully loaded version with the fancy red paint will set you back $47,200 Canadian. For that money, this CX-5 is loaded with a lot of stuff, including heated seats in all 4 corners along with a heated steering wheel and ventilated front seats. There's a panoramic sunroof that lets in a lot of light. There's also a head-up display, surround view cameras, a wireless phone charging pad, a hands-free power liftgate, blind spot sensors with rear and front cross-traffic alert, lane centering system, adaptive cruise, automatic emergency braking, and parking sensors all around, to name a few. So, what's the verdict on the new Mazda CX-5? Well, in my opinion, it feels like as though Mazda sold their soul, despite the paint color being called Soul Red. I'm not bothered about the fact that it no longer has a turbocharged engine. In fact, I look forward to that new hybrid powertrain, and I do like that new infotainment system. Plus, I do like the bigger space that this car offers while retaining some of the driving dynamics. My issue is with the lack of any physical controls for commonly used functions. That, and of course the driving dynamics, are what made the old CX-5 stand out in a crowded crossover market. But now, having to look away from the road to make sure that I've selected the function that I want to select is distracting and potentially dangerous. Plus, the interior doesn't seem like that big of a step up from the old generation, even on this top spec trim. So it's a bigger and still enjoyable to drive crossover, but it lost its soul and uniqueness, and that's what made the old CX-5 such a standout. But again, that's just my opinion. What are your thoughts on the new Mazda CX-5? In the meantime, if you would like to know more about this 2026 Mazda CX-5, I have a more detailed written review of it over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up there. And as always, I will see you in the next car, truck, or most likely, the SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one.